This week on Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, we welcome musician and author of Saigon Siren, Memoir of a Stroke Recovery. Antonio Iannella's journey through recovery became a testament to the healing power of creativity. From early sparks of inspiration in childhood to intense, life-changing challenges of rebuilding himself, Antonio found music and writing to be a refuge and a guide. Tune in to hear how Antonio transformed adversity into a renewed sense of purpose, finding hope and joy in simple moments, and ultimately reconnecting with the passion that saved his life. Thank you for joining us for Part 2, Antonio Iannella's interview.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke. Stroke offers a powerful, life-changing shift in perspective. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. Beyond Stillness offers a moment of pause for storytelling and reflection. Ultimately, we create a welcoming environment that reveres the moment beyond stroke's paralysis. Still moments unite humanity and divinity. I'm your host, Molly Bucola. Before we begin today, we take a moment of pause to honor the wisdom that has emerged through our own recoveries. And we give thanks. Now, Antonio Iannella's interview. Antonio, thank you for sharing your story with us. Part of your recovery when you returned home was wanting to learn more about what happened scientifically. What was going on emotionally when you first returned home?
At the beginning, like the very beginning, the first 6-8 months, I was living at my dad's on my own. He was living with his partner. His house was free, so I lived there, and he lived nearby, so he was coming to visit. But I had a pretty strong mindset of getting on top of this, and I was just so dedicated. Yeah, I still am, but it's two sides of the coin, because there was times I was just motivated and I was doing my physio and sitting at the kitchen table, playing with blocks and picking up cutlery and listening to my physios saying in my head, use it or lose it, and straighten that arm and tighten that spine and all those things. And then I'd have times where I was just sort of really down and going through, I guess, the beginnings of depression.
And what helped when you were in those moments?
It was really just focusing on things like my children, making music. That was, I think, the biggest thing that really helped, is having purpose. I keep talking about purpose, but when we have purpose, it enables us to step out of the victim mentality, because we're just focused in the zone, and we're there totally present in the moment. And that really helped. That was just getting back to making music again. And like I said, I was staying at my dad's house, and my brother helped me put together my musical equipment, recording studio, very small amount of gear. And I just called up an old friend and we began recording.
I love that you thought, how frustrating that I can't use my hand and I'm a guitar player, but you thought, I'll use my other hand and order a piano. So in order to keep the music flowing, you figured out a different way than you had known, a different way to keep music in your life.
Yeah, I did, yeah. And when I was at my dad's house, there was an old piano there, which was my brother's piano. And I set up my recording equipment in that room where the piano was. When I was a guitar player, I didn't really play piano. I knew basic chords, and it just began tinkering about and finding little melodies and not playing like a pro piano. I'm not going to say I'm a pianist because that's an insult to piano players, but it just enabled me to make up ideas and create and write and compose and record. So that's where it began. And that
Yeah.
gave me purpose. That gave me something to put my energy into.
Yeah. Every day sitting down.
And because what happens to people who have strokes or any kind of illness or trauma, you're in this, first of all, say you're 40 and you've just spent your whole adult life chasing a career and building your identity and working. And then all of a sudden that's just gone. You can't return to it. It's a massive hit. For me, luckily, I had music to fall back on, and it was that just trying to discover how I could get back to it.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
I've spoken with a few stroke survivors who were musicians before their stroke, and now it's painful to think about creating music and band life. And it reminds
yeah,
me of a deep love. When
it
we're in
is.
love, it can be the absolute greatest thing and the most painful. How did you approach that?
It was painful, especially during rehab. My occupational therapist got someone to bring my guitar in, and we began doing therapy with my guitar, and it just wasn't going to happen. I couldn't feel the strings, and it was really heartbreaking. And I had a hearing damage as well. And I remember things like my best mate is a musician, and he would come in to visit, and my guitar would be in the corner of the room, and he'd pick it up and play, and it just like, dude, you're out of tune, mate. It sounds like you're out of tune because I couldn't, my brain couldn't put it all together and hear
Yeah,
music. It just sounded really weird. So I get it for other stroke survivors who are going through that pain. But hey, you should connect me with them because I'll encourage them to find another way.
yeah,
Because there are instruments you can play one-handed. Trumpet, I thought of picking up the trumpet like one-handed.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah. It's different. It's different.
yeah, it is different. It
Absolutely.
is different. But you know what happens when things are different? You discover new things because when they're different, you're on a different journey and you're triggering different parts of the brain, and therefore you come up with different ideas. Like when I started writing songs and composing on the piano, honestly, Molly, I would just play stuff, and I created like this little three-piece band, and the guitar players and vocalists, and I'd be playing the piano, and I'd have these songs, and they'd go, "What are you playing now?" I go, "I don't know, it just sounds good, you know, this chord, and I'm hitting that, and I think that might be a D major seven." And then I'd be playing, and it's because I just was on this path of discovery. You
Huh.
know, it's like I had this knowledge and understanding, but I don't know, it's just a new approach. I was on a new path. So I was discovering new things. Things sounded fresh and new. And it could be a simple chord, but because it was played on a piano, it just sounded different. And that's when the songs started coming.
When things are different, we're on a different journey. Sage
Yeah.
Antonio, thank you.
Yeah. It's like when you drive to work, for example, and you have to go that way all the time, and you just know it the back of
Yeah.
your, like you don't even have to think about it. But then suddenly you're driving down that road and there's a roadblock and you've got to take a detour, and you take that detour, and then you discover there's a whole another area that you didn't even know existed, and there's a beautiful view across the valley, and that wouldn't have happened if you didn't go on that path of discovery.
Uh,
And that happens to us when some kind of tragedy, because we're faced with having to go. I have this real basic analogy that is like when you have a stroke, at the beginning, you're faced with this massive mountain, and you spend, I don't know, however long trying to move the mountain because you want to get back to who you were. You want to get back to on that journey. But then you discover that you can't move the mountain. You're going to have to learn to either try and shrink it down, climb over it, go around it. And when you get to the top, you realize, oh, look at the view from up here. It's glorious. That's the journey.
I love that perspective. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing. You mentioned how your perspective has changed. And I remember a point in your story when you talked about your work friends visiting and talking about daily life at work, and it made you cringe and you couldn't listen to what they were saying about the stressors of daily life. Can you tell me a little bit about your shift in perspective that you recognized in that moment?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a moment, but it was more like a transition. I call it in the book, there's the chapter that talks about that. I call it the severing, the chapter. And that is because at the beginning, I was working, I had a day job. I wasn't doing music at the time so much, it was just more of a hobby. And I was in a pretty committed career. And when that happened, a lot of my work colleagues would come and visit, which was so beautiful. Like everyone from work, the offices, I was getting flowers and chocolates from companies that were connected to the company. So it was really, really beautiful. Beautiful. So for the first few weeks, I was heartbroken that I couldn't be a part of that team anymore. But then during those visits, the guys would come in and talk about how stressful things were. I began to putting it all together and going, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to do that anymore. I started to think maybe that's why this has happened. Maybe life was telling me that, hey, you're on the wrong path and you're not fulfilled. Hey, this is going to happen and it's going to be painful, but hey, there's a new opportunity for you to start again. So I started to sort of adopt that mindset. Maybe it was a bit crazy because it's still early days. But I began to see that, okay, all of a sudden, I can't go back to that. It's pretty clear. So I had to find something else. And music has been such a big part of my life. So that was that transitioning where I was like, yeah, listening to that, he just going on about how stressful. Mind you, I was in hospital, couldn't walk, barely could speak, lying in my bed, and he's there telling me about how stressful his life was. And I just went, I just don't want to live like that anymore.
Hmm.
I don't want to have that mindset. As a society, we just get caught up in chasing those things, that carrot. We're driving towards it. And then most people, when we get it, we're still not satisfied.
Hmm.
So I just want to let go of that feeling and focus on what I felt, what made me feel good inside.
And that's how you thought about it then?
I was beginning to know it. My OT person, I call her the confidant. I just tell her everything. She'd sit there and listen to me. I'd be bawling my eyes out. I had these ideas, and she'd bring me a notepad, and I'd be writing lyrics. And they were really messy because I didn't have a lot of control of my hand very well. It was very shaky. So I was beginning to write lyrics and thoughts and ideas, and it was just the beginning. It was just the spark. It was part of that hope. Because hope is everything, isn't it, during a recovery? You've got to have a little bit of hope. You only need a spark, and then that spark becomes a flame.
Hmm. And you definitely have a flame. You're mentioning moments that are really painful in recovery and then new ways of looking at them. You mentioned not being able to work, and that's the reality for a lot of stroke survivors when we've worked our whole lives towards a career or a goal, and then in one moment, we're not able to
On
work. And you said it was a process, but
process.
you also said there was a little spark in that moment. So it's as if the pain offered a spark in a new direction that became what
Yes.
you're saying, a flame.
Yeah, it did. But I also want to say this, that I don't want other people who have had strokes, who are going through this now, like I did 15 years ago, that it's easy, because it wasn't. I don't want people to feel like, hey, I did it, so you can do it too, because that's not a great message. That doesn't make us feel part of a community. It's really hard. It's God hard, so hard. And some people don't have that. It breaks my heart to hear that they don't. I still am connected with stroke survivors. And some of the posts that they put up on Facebook about what they're going through, it's heartbreaking. So I don't want people to think, yeah, you just do these, one, two, three steps to a better life after stroke. Every journey is its own individual journey. And you just got to fight to find something that you can do with yourself. That's like me. I want to put out that message that if you start making music, your life will be great after stroke. It may not be for those people, but all I'm trying to encourage is to find something that brings you joy within yourself, not externally, within yourself. What makes your heart beat and what makes you want to wake up in the morning and do something? I think that's the key. And it won't be easy, but you've got to dig through the pain and find a way. I've met many stroke survivors who have gone on to do things like, oh, well, you, Molly, look at you. When we met, you were telling me that you were an athlete. And now you've gotten back to running after what you went through and what you've told me about your stroke. It was horrendous. And you're running. And why are you running? Because you had hope and you had passion and you found that thing and you were going to do it. And that's what I'm talking about, is
Yeah.
finding that thing.
Yeah. What is that thing for you now, today? What do you get
I think
up in the
it's
morning for? Where do you find your internal joy now?
I think it's exactly what we are doing right now. It's communicating, connecting with people, listening to my dog bark at someone who's in the driveway. It really is just simple things, meeting people like yourself and sharing and learning and growing. They're the things that I like to do. It could be creative. It could be simple, having a conversation with my daughter, things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
just real simple things.
Yeah. You mentioned in your story that music has come to be your purpose. What does that look like now?
When I was in my 20s and part of my 30s, I was working as a musician, playing gigs. And there was that time I lived in London and had a band over there, and we were gigging a lot and had a small recording deal. And then when that ended and I come back to Australia and started just doing the 9 to 5 thing, music had shifted from being the main focus to just something I did every now and again. I pick up a guitar, and that was a bit sad. But now that it's just part of my life, my piano's over there just behind me, and I'm cooking. I'll sit at the piano. It's actually in the kitchen, right beside the fridge, my piano. So I'll just tinker about and make up melodies and little piano lines, and it just flows through me all the time. And I'll come up with an idea, and someone will say something, and it might trigger a lyric, and then that lyric I'll write it down in my phone, and then come home and just lose myself in that space and
Yeah.
write a song or compose a little musical piece or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like that feeling. I like having that space. Stroke has given me that space. We've
Mm.
talked so much about time to explore, time to let those feelings and that energy just flow through you,
Yeah.
letting it come out. So that's what I love. I just love that. I love my life being at that place right now.
And you allow that to flow often. Your stroke was in 2009, and you recently published a book entitled Saigon Siren Memoir of a Stroke Recovery. Please tell us about the process of writing that book.
It's exactly the same as making music. It's the same process. It's just letting that energy flow. And the first thing was learning how to write. I had to spend years because I began writing this book in 2012, about 3 years after my stroke. And leading up to beginning those first drafts, it was just that energy of creativity, like artistic expression. And I just turned my lyrical songwriting skills into words in the form of a book. But it still took a long time to find my voice.
Hmm.
I would go to the library with my laptop and just go, right, I'm in the library for 4 hours, I'm going to write. And I could write here. I'm in my home. I've got a beautiful home. I could write here. But I want to get into that mindset of dedication. This is what I'm disciplined. This is what I'm here to do. I'm not going to bring my phone. I'm going to go there with my water bottle, my laptop, and a tissue, and some tissues because I was cried a lot in the library. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I just let it pour. It was like, yeah, it just poured out of me. So
Wow.
it was beautiful.
How did it
Really
assist
enjoyed
in
it.
your recovery process?
It was quite cathartic. It was very healing in ways, and especially when I had to write some of the real difficult scenes there. I actually quite enjoyed them in terms of getting that expression out. It was very painful. And even still to this day, 15 years later, I still cry over those emotions. So they're quite strong. But I wanted that to be in the story. So I had to go through those feelings. I had to feel them all over again. I had to visualize myself in intensive care. I had to visualize that rescue flight from Vietnam home to Australia, the angiograms I had, the MRIs, the recovery, getting back to work. And I just had to relive it all and just get it out. But it was It was lovely. I must admit, I really enjoyed. The writing process is the best part. The publishing part, and that's hard work. The writing is just beautiful.
Mm. That's courageous to put yourself back in those painful moments and write about them in detail.
I think you. One of the things I've really am comfortable with now is to say I'm an artist. When I was in my 20s, I didn't own it. And now I create and I create, and I love that. And that's what artists do, is they relive those emotions. That's what connects us as human beings, has been, especially through art. And I'm not just talking about writing or music, but you look at Van Gogh's work, for example, you could just see the pain in that. And that's why we love it so much.
Mm.
Stories, human stories, have been around for, since life began, and
Mm.
it always will continue.
At one point, you mentioned that your loved ones read your book and didn't understand what you were going through in detail in that moment. And you and I have had conversations about what questions to ask when someone's going through something. We don't necessarily want to overstep our bounds, but we don't want to feel insensitive.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. Most people didn't ask. Even my close family, they didn't ask a lot of detailed questions about what was it like when I was in intensive care. Could you move? Could you swallow? Because I couldn't swallow. They had to suck the phlegm out of my throat. No one really wanted to know that stuff. So that was part of the purpose of writing the book, was to expose people to that, because most people go through recoveries of any kind of on their own, in terms of not sharing those experiences. Yeah, hey, they might share how difficult it was, but not the details. And I wanted to, as part of my mindset of raising awareness, was to talk about those. Not able to feed yourself, not able to shower, not able to dress yourself and dry your own body. I wanted to let everyone know about that, not only for my family, but just for awareness, bring awareness to what constitutes a recovery of any sort.
Mm. So your writing became very purposeful as well.
Purpose, yeah, it did, yeah, it did. It was driven from that. Yeah, so yeah, really, people don't ask, and people are, I think, are afraid to ask because it's a sensitive subject, and they don't know what kind of response they're going to get. They might hurt someone, and might bring up some emotions, so people don't want to speak about. But through my experience, when I've met other survivors of any kind of illness or tragedy or trauma or whatever, and I've asked them, what's happened? Do you mind? Can I ask you what's happened? They just want to let it out. They just want to tell you that. I've had it happen to me so many times where I've met someone and go, oh, what's happened? How come you're in a wheelchair? And it just comes out. They just want to tell you.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's not because the person who's going through it doesn't want to share it. It's more because other people don't ask the right questions.
Hmm.
Or not that they don't ask the right questions, they're too afraid to ask the right questions.
Yeah. With that, there probably is a space that must be cultivated in order to ask those questions. You do that in your relationships with others. You hold space very graciously for other people. And so asking questions or talking about your own experience in depth invites a sense of connection, a
Yeah.
human connection.
But it does. Well, like, I've met you, we've been speaking for the last few weeks, and I feel that from you, where I can just tell you, because you do that too, you hold that space and you enable people to express themselves. So it's critical to bring people together and raise awareness and understanding. It comes from a place of trust as
Hmm.
well. That person who is asking the questions, you kind of get a sense of empathy and understanding, and therefore the person expressing themselves feels safe and
Mm-hmm.
trusts that person, so it enables them to express.
Yeah. You mentioned your friends who visited in the hospital. And a lot of times when we visit people in the hospital, we're nervous. We're like, what am I going to say? What can I do? What do you wish that people who visited you in the hospital, I mean, that's a very raw moment. What What do you wish that they said or did in that moment?
I think not afraid to have discussions about just life rather than always being focused around hospital and illness. I remember during my first year, I had a lot of visitors. I have an Italian background, so I've got a big family. So I'd had visitors from people I hadn't seen since I was like 3 years old. I'm like, who are you? I'm your dad's cousins, neighbours, sisters, uncle. Oh, right. Okay, thanks for the flowers. I baked you a lasagna. It was a bit like that. And so that was really lovely.
Uh-huh.
But it was always based around the health, and he's unwell, and it was all that. And then I had this friend who I didn't know very well, but a friend of a friend's, and they started coming to visit me. But they would come and we would not talk about stroke or illness. We just talk about whatever. And I felt human. So I felt like, oh, life can be normal. I can feel normal. It's not going to all be about being unwell. And because sometimes people automatically treat you in the way that you perceive to be. So, for example, if you or someone in a wheelchair or on crutches or you have some kind of disability, they unconsciously treat you differently. So I clearly remember when that friend would visit, I'd feel so at ease, like, oh, well, I felt like I'm normal. They come to visit once and I didn't know them very well and we just struck a chord and then they kept visiting.
Oh, very sweet. Antonio, can you share about somebody that you have met along your journey that has been a particularly inspiring stroke survivor?
Yeah, there's been a couple of people who I've met. One of them are good friends. There's a couple others that are distant friends. One of those distant friends is named Bill Deering. He's a runner and he runs triathlons or ultra marathons, like 50K runs. When we've chatted online or through Messenger, he's telling me about that he can run better than he can walk. And he does these 50K runs. And I'm just trying to grasp that. Wow, how the hell do you do that? Don't you get fatigued? And he's like, I just get into this headspace and I just go. And little stories like that have been inspiring.
Yeah.
He's one of them. I have another friend who she's gone on to have a couple of kids. It's something she wanted. She's gotten back to work. She looks after herself health-wise. She used to love bike riding, so she got herself a recumbent bike, the ones where you lie down on, so she can still ride. Yeah, it's meeting people like you. Oh, yeah, I've got to tell you something that when we met and you told me that you were an athlete and you got back to running, then the week after I had physio and I said to my physio, I want to run. I want to get back to running. And she's like, why? What's brought this on? No, I met this woman, Molly. It's Molly O from Oregon. And she can run. I want to run. Okay. Do you really want to do that? Did you run before? Not really, a little bit. But so yeah. So
well, I bet you're going to have people say, I want to write music. Well, where'd that come from? Well, I heard this guy named Antonio. I love it. Well, thank you, Antonio. Thank you for spending the past few 7 or so weeks with me and for crafting your story. I know that you wrote a book and you're a writer yourself, but thank you for walking through this process and doing it in a different way in order to share with your fellow stroke survivors.
Really, thanks goes to you, Molly, because it's been a really joyous experience meeting you and sharing and been fantastic. It's given me a real lift to and a sense of confidence to be who I am. So thank you.
It's important that you are who you are. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Storytelling empowers us to share our experiences in a way that invites others to reflect on their own. In closing, we offer reflection questions as an opportunity to spark dialogue with yourself, friends, family, or fellow stroke survivors. In a moment, I will read questions aloud. You can also find them written in the podcast episode description. Community conversation prompts. What helps you get through the tough times? And How do you arrange your schedule to encounter moments of joy each day?
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org. Another way to support is to like, share, or subscribe to our weekly show. Again, thank you for devoting time and space for this week's episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.
Thank you for listening to Part 2, Antonio Iannella's interview. For the full story, please listen to Part 1, Antonio Iannella's story. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. In this episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, Antonio shared his inspiring journey of resilience, creativity, and hope. His story is a powerful reminder of how we can reclaim purpose and joy, even after life takes an unexpected turn. We hope Antonio's journey encourages you to find strength in your passions and to keep moving forward. Until next time, stay connected with what lights you up. And remember, as part of the stroke community, you are more than supportive. You are inspirational. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with others and consider donating to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.
If you are part of the stroke community and have a story you'd like to share on the show, please contact us. Email molly@beyondstillness.org.